what you want to talk to the audience about grit with. So I want to now say thanks to everybody that has joined us on the Getting Gritty with the New Year conference. I want to now come with our next speaker, which is Frances Helena, coming from Australia. And so, Frances, I'm giving you the floor. Please introduce yourself. Let us know who you are. And if you need to share the screen, let me know. Okay, welcome.
Thanks so much, Dr. India. Thank you. And Miss Miriam, who just spoke before. What an amazing group of ladies we have here today. And yes, coming live to you from Sydney, Australia. And this time we are going to talk about, obviously we're here to talk about getting gritty for 2026. So I'm Frances Helena, if you don't know who I am, and I am the founder and CEO of Beautifully Diverse Fashion, which is not just only a fashion brand, but a social enterprise that allows people to be comfortable in their own skin. So it doesn't matter where you're from, if you've never had any modeling experience, it doesn't matter what you're going through. We want you to be confident in any area of your life. So it doesn't matter, if you are a domestic violence survivor, a single mom, or a mother in general, or just someone who has lost a loved one. We want everyone to feel good about themselves, not just on the runway, but just feel good when they walk around in public. And we also upcycle clothing. So we basically take any unwanted used clothes that people don't want anymore, and we turn it into something else. And we put it on these amazing people, and they present it. And yeah, that's pretty much what we do. And so, well, let's get to it. So this whole year, I don't know about you guys, it has been a super long year, but we have made it. It is now, as you know, it's December of 2025. And so next year, I want you guys to just feel better about yourself. I want you to reflect on what has happened this year. What are some things that you agree with? What are some things that you didn't agree with, and what you could have done better? So remember, none of us are perfect. We are all learning. Every day is a learning day. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you take time to reflect on who you are as a person, not just to better yourself, but to actually say, thank yourself for coming this far, because a lot of the time we actually don't thank ourselves for what we've achieved, what we've done. We're always looking for the next best thing, etc., etc. But it is so important that you reflect on yourself and what you are setting out to do, because without that reflection, you can't move forward in anything you do in this life. So, and I know it's harder than it sounds, right? You want to be the next big star, whatever you're trying to do in your life. But you need to take time, write down on a piece of paper. And you can even do this right now. So you get a piece of paper, if you're sitting at your computer, on your phone, whatever, write down what you were most proud of this year. And I think for me personally, the thing that I am most proud of is just getting through each day. Because for me personally, I've had a whole bunch of health issues that I'm still working on. But during the last 5 to 6 years, I've had pneumonia, bronchitis. I've had COVID twice. I've had a cyst removed and endometriosis. What else is there? This year I had an ear infection. So, it's just been one after the other. And I think the biggest thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm still here and I'm still working on my health. And, I guess I'm just happy to just be here, because a lot of the things that I had experienced were pretty life-threatening. But no, so now we're in a better place. And feel free, Dr. India, to chime in, or whoever else is on here. I don't know if Miss Mariam's still on, but feel free to type in the comments as well, your thoughts and what you think. And so, with the new year, so if you actually believe in it, you don't have to believe in it. But I know for me, I grew up all around the world. So I lived in Malaysia, China, lived in New Zealand. I've actually been living in the UK recently, but I'm back home in Australia at the moment. But I had come across just growing up in Malaysia where the predominant ethnic groups are Chinese, Malay, and Indian, and they have every year when it's Chinese New Year there is it's a zodiac, a horoscope. I'm pretty sure it's a zodiac. Somebody correct me. But next year is actually the year of the horse, and if any of you are born in the year of the horse, well, it is your year to shine. And even if you're not born in the year of the horse, you can make this year your best year ever. And I know it's harder. It's easier said than done, is what I mean. But what I want you to do is to write down what you want to achieve. So even if you get a jar, this is a good idea. Get a jar and write down on each piece of paper what you want to achieve. So put it in a jar, right? Write everything. Doesn't even matter how crazy it is, but write everything you want, put it in this jar. And I want you to basically put the jar somewhere where you can't, well, I wouldn't say can't find it, but put it somewhere where you know that you'll find it. And then once the whole year is done, or even if you make it 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is, I want you to take all the things out of the jar and see what you have accomplished.
Oh, wow. That's
And
powerful.
yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
See you. Okay.
My screen is still acting crazy, so I'm gonna have to reset after you speak and see if I can get it to work again.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm here 100%. I promise. I'm streaming on another channel too, so I'm looking at two computers right now because I have another couple of channels that I'm also doing at the same time. But yes, I'm here. I can hear you 100%.
Okay. But yeah, that's what I want you guys to do. So even if it's, from that 3 month period, 6 month period, take all those things out of the jar, the pieces of paper, and look what you've already achieved. Now, if you haven't achieved that goal yet, put it back in the jar. So I want you basically to make a goal for yourself. And, and even if by the end of 26 that you haven't achieved it, that's okay. Remember this, what is for you won't miss you. And, for me, I have had those experiences where I had, imposter syndrome. I wasn't sure if, what I was doing was working. So for me, I had to reinvent myself. I became hearing impaired a couple of years, well, just before COVID, actually. So that changed my whole life. Because basically lost one of my senses. I mean, and I was only 25 at the time. So I had to figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to do this. And they still didn't have any funding. Hi, Miss Letitia.
Yes, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. I'm currently trying to get my my camera figured out as Frances is just killing the game right now, talking to us about grit and everything, and sharing her testimonial about overcoming COVID and things like that. I mean, what a powerful testimony. And I'm just going to let her continue to do this. I'm just working on my end on my camera, so don't worry about me. But I'm just going to let Frances continue to knock this thing out.
Oh, no worries. And feel free, Miss Letitia, if anything, resonates with you, feel free to chime in and everything. But yeah, so I became hearing impaired, and I couldn't even tell you what that felt like from someone who could hear everything. It doesn't matter if the whole house had noise, music, whatever, people talking, I could hear you in the other room. So imagine going from that to now I can't even hear you. So I had lost 50% in both ears at 25. So I was living in New Zealand, and we had a big earthquake that year. And, I don't know if you've ever experienced something where your ears just keep ringing. It just kept ringing. I'm like, what in the world is all this? So I went to the audiologist, and they said, oh, you've already lost 50%. I said, 50%? And they said, oh, you're going to need hearing aids. And I said, hearing aids? Me? At my age? Because I was 25. They said, well, if you don't, it's going to affect your speech. And I know some people had started, they heard me talking and said, oh, your speech sounds a little bit. And I said, really? And I had to come to terms with it. It was really about self-accepting myself. and actually being like, well, look, there's, it's just a little setback. We can figure this out. But when I finally did get hearing aids, it was also a little bit of a struggle, because at the time, because this is just before COVID, they had the 9 to 5 jobs and all that sort of stuff, right? And I was like, this is not going to work for me, because I couldn't even hear the instructions. I used to set up banquets for people's weddings and whatnot, and we had the big halls. You have to walk all the way down to the other end of the room just to hear the instructions and all this, and that was just painful, because I'm like, we're wasting time. We need to get this done by a certain hour. And then COVID kicked in. I think, to be honest, personally, COVID was really a blessing. It's brought all of us here together on this screen, and we're on different parts of the world, and I think it definitely
Right.
changed me to where it showed me what I was capable of doing or able to do. Because I saw, I think the first thing I saw was Own Your Future Challenge by Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins. No idea what this was about. I didn't even know who they were. So I went and did this thing, and this was for 5 days, 5-day challenge. And I was up at 2 a.m. in the morning, my time.
Wow.
And I watched this whole thing, just listening to it, and I really got into it. And then, over time, ended up doing more things. Even now, speaking online, I'm like, who would have thought of just speaking online, just
Right.
randomly about all these sorts of
I know.
things. And yeah, and so it was because of that we met so many different people. And there were some companies in Australia that ended up merging their business out into the USA. So the network got bigger and things like that, and that's how we ended up at New York Fashion Week. Had no experience
Wow.
in fashion. I didn't even have any experience in sewing. And one of the girls, she had modeled for New York Fashion Week. She was a curvy lady, and she was like that. And for her, that was a self-confidence thing. And she said, "Oh," and we become really good friends. And she said, "Oh, you design and stuff, right?" I said, "Oh, it's just little things. Like I just make hair scrunchies and bags, because a friend taught me how to do that to make extra money." We had nothing to do during COVID. There's
Yeah.
nothing to do.
We were making
And
COVID masks. Remember? People were making
exactly, yeah, exactly.
bling
There's
bling
nothing to do.
masks. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she said, "Oh, you should apply." I said, "What am I going to do?" She's like, "Oh, you could showcase your collection." I'm like, "What collection? I have nothing to show." And she just kept bugging me. Like she just would not stop. And I was just like, you know what? Fine, I'll apply. So I did. And then maybe 24, 48 hours later, I get this message on WhatsApp, and they said, "Oh, we're so and so from Runway 7 Fashion in New York. We like your idea. What you're trying to do? Do you want to showcase?" And I'm like, "Showcase? Like, what does that
Huh.
mean?" Like,
Right.
in Australia, we have a smaller market. So, we have Australian Fashion Week, but, you have to fly down to another state for it.
Right.
But I was like, "Oh, New York Fashion Week, what do we do?" And there was people I knew. There was a guy, he is married to someone I know, and he's from America, from Philadelphia. And he said, "Oh, trust me, everybody wants to come to New York Fashion Week. If you got in from the other side of the world, you're doing pretty damn good." And I said, "I
Oh
don't even know
yeah.
what this is. I don't even know what we're
Right.
supposed to do." And so, I said, "Okay, well, let's just do it, see what happens." Um, and so we went out there, did this thing. I met like a whole bunch of different people, because I basically found a whole bunch of models from different platforms that I was working on and everything. And
Hmm.
we didn't have no, we raised some money, and then we needed some more cash, and had no idea how we're going to get this cash. I had 24, 48 hours to come up with all this cash. And by some miracle, I don't know what happened, but they said, "Oh, look, we like what you do. You're already here. Just go on, and we'll take care of the rest and figure this out." And I said, "Oh, okay." And because I didn't even know what to say to the models I had backstage, because I hadn't told them about the situation, because it's obviously, it's my responsibility, and I didn't want to panic them and all that. And so then when
Right.
that weight was lifted off, I cried a little bit. Like we all sort of just cried, because we were just like, "Oh my God," like, because this is going to go live.
Yeah.
Because there was myself, two other designers, and then we were like, "Okay." And so we went, did this thing, and then it sort of just created some domino effect. But while this was happening, I was getting evicted at my house in Australia.
Mm.
I what to
Wow.
do, because I was like, do I go home now? Because it's a 2-day flight from the States to from Australia to the States and vice versa, 2-day flight.
Mhm.
And so I was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I was speaking to my dad through WhatsApp. He said, look, you're already here. Don't worry about it. We'll figure the rest out. Just go do this thing. And I said, okay. And in my mind, though, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, what if they, take all my stuff? Or like, what if,
Yeah.
because my parents live in 2 different states and my parents are separated and all this sort of thing. So it was kind of hard. And I'm an only child. So it wasn't like, and because of the time difference, it's a 16,
Right.
17-hour time difference. So I had to call a friend. I said, oh, I need you to take care of my stuff. So they took care of that while I was doing this. And then we ended up doing a second show for Black History Month down in Philadelphia. So it just kept spiraling. But I think the biggest point about it is that no matter what happens in your life, you can get through it. And I've had times where I've been in the States and I had nowhere to go, like nowhere. And there's been
Wow.
really good groups like Host a Sister where you can just meet somebody from anywhere and, they'll give you, free accommodation in exchange. You do X, Y, B, and Z. And I had like no money. Like I was already out
Wow.
of money. But they were good people that, really had helped me. And I remember one time sitting in Times Square, this fella, he was
Mhm.
older, an elderly man, needed help with his phone. And he was fumbling about it. So I was helping him. We're sitting here and it's probably after midnight now. But Times Square never sleeps. That's the thing about Times Square. It's all just lights and
Yeah.
everything happening.
Right.
And after I helped him, he said, oh, here, look,
Right.
I'm going to give you this. He reached out in his pocket, gave me, it must have been $60 or $80, something like that. And he said, I want you to have this. And I said, no, I don't want your money. He said, no. He said, I really appreciate what you did for me. And we've been here talking for, however long. And I know what you told me. And I said, I want you to take this, go get something to eat, go, whatever. And I think it was just that moment where this complete stranger had just, opened himself up
Wow.
and just gave me something just because I did something small. And I was just sitting there. I had nothing to do because
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just sitting there thinking about what I'm going to do next, really, and how I was going to get
Right.
myself out of this. And so,
Hmm.
that really had helped. And I think, no matter what we are facing, you can overcome anything as long as there's people who believe in you. Because this person didn't
Yes.
even know me, but for some reason he
Wow.
believed something about
Yeah.
me or whatever it was, and he just helped. So I think that's the biggest thing about, if you're going to get gritty next year, you really do have to have a good bunch of people around you. And don't get me wrong, there's some other people in your life
Right.
in your life who you're
Right.
close to, and they'll say, why are you doing this? Is this making money? Why? They'll
Mhm.
ask you all sorts of questions. And even though you love them, keep your distance, because that, and I think that's what Miss Mariam was saying before, it's all about the mind as well, right? So that
Right.
is a negative thing that will come into your mind, and you'll start questioning yourself and being like,
Right.
oh, what's going on? What's happening? And, I think it's really important. And it's easier said than done, I know. But,
Right.
if you've got good people and they're encouraging you, you just watch what they do. All you have to do is just listen to what they're saying, what they're doing. And, you can see who's really there for you. And it
Exactly.
doesn't mean physically, like, money or whatever, but just being there or showing up. I think that's the biggest thing about getting gritty, is showing up, not just for, other people, because obviously it might inspire other people, but for yourself. You need to show up for you. And it's hard. There are times where I'm like, it's not working. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But,
Right.
like Miss Mariam said before, take a walk. Like for me personally, I love sitting. There's a place in Brisbane, which is in Queensland. That's another state of Australia. It's basically near the river, and you can just walk along there. But I like sipping on coffee and watching people. I've seen the most funniest things sometimes just watching people. I've seen a couple, saw this couple arguing. She wanted to take a selfie, and her fellow was like, oh, not again, blah, 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 blah. And he walked up because she wanted really perfect picture. And he was
Uh-huh.
like, So we walked off already. And I've seen, dogs doing. I saw one dog. He just he was
Yeah.
tired of walking. He didn't want to walk anymore. So his owner was like dragging him across the grass, and he just rolling on the grass, and he's like, I don't want to do this. So, sometimes watching other people and you just doing nothing just, can help you fix your mind to,
Yes.
get better. So I will talk forever. So chime in anytime you want.
I think so. Like I like going to the airport and watching people there. You just kind of get a sense of, like, as you're a people watcher, that we're all in this thing together. We all bleed red. We all need each other. We all share the same infirmities and the same, high moments. And it's so interesting when you watch people, in random moments like that, like at the mall or at the beach or at the airport, and you start seeing similar things in people of different cultures, different backgrounds, similar things that they share that you share. I find that one moment I was in Hawaii. I talked about this, parasailing in Hawaii, but one thing I loved about going to Hawaii was their richness in the culture, and how they really do break down that, everybody is created equal. Everybody's on the same level. There's no big I's and little U's, right? And how together, as we harness grit, we can make so many different things happen. And it just makes me think too in my heart, I hope we can get past those negative things that hold us down, whether that's envies, jealousies, insecurities, feeling like somebody's going to steal this or somebody's going to outshine you on this, or like all these little things that people struggle with, where we can really help catapult somebody else, because you never know when they might even turn around and pay it forward for you. You might need them one day. And so, as you watch people and you're going through, you see the grit that everybody shares. You see the humanity aspect of all of us. I don't care how much money we have. I don't care what family we've been born into. We all have grit, and we all need grit, and we all need each other. And I think another part of this that makes me think of grit and how we need to thrive in 2026 is, like, even in natural disasters. Like you talked, Francis, about how you guys are going through the situation, unfortunate situation of the shooting. And there's also natural disasters. There's so many things. Like, I know we went through some hurricanes here in Florida, but even when you're looking at natural disasters or criminal activities, that brings us all close together and makes us bond. And I just have to believe Maslow, when Maslow said that we are all inherently good. Everybody is inherently good. Once they have their basic needs met, they are really inherently good people. And I think that we should, get back to the basics of that, seeing everybody for their best, seeing everybody, giving them the benefit of a doubt, and seeing how you can leave somebody in a better situation than what you left them. So thanks again for sharing. And I don't know, Leticia, if you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I enjoyed your share, and I think it's true. Our grit really shapes us, and if we have to be able to anchor into it in a way that serves us as well.
Right. And you're tuning in from where, Leticia?
I'm in Yorkshire, England.
Wonderful. I love it. We've got Florida, Australia, and England on this wonderful conference. I'm loving this. And so you're right, and I think that there's a hope in it. Grit really, I talked the other day, I wrote a little post, and I talked about how grit never dies. It doesn't, and that's the thing that you've been talking about, Francis, and you mentioning that, Leticia. It's really is like, I just see it as a glue, a gel that holds everything together. So with that said, Francis, go ahead, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Go ahead and continue on of inspiring, motivating us, and telling us more about grit, or sharing a story, or sharing, maybe something else you wanted to offer the audience.
Yeah, I was like, I need a break from my voice. But
I know.
You know what? I think the other thing about grit is that it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of the times when we as humans do something, especially when I'm doing stuff on the run, I'm like, the design has to look like this. It has to, all this sort of stuff. But, nothing is ever perfect. Even us, even when, something can always go wrong. And I think when we did our first show, the music, so
Right.
I didn't realize we can add on to the music and stuff, because normally now I just normally just make a soundtrack and we're good to go kind of thing. But because it
Right.
was my first time to do this, the music played and I was hoping it would change. And then we're like, oh, damn, what happened? So we're trying to figure this out backstage. And then we're like, it's all right. Just go, 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 go. So all of the models start walking out doing their thing, because I had a timer where it had a presentation, and it was going to come on with, that model's walking out, and it would have had like some facts about like that particular model and everything. But so when the pictures came out, it was like a different model with different pictures and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, oh, well, we'll just have to, figure it out. But, I think from that, we actually ended up getting an offer to come and do Black History down in Philadelphia. And I said, oh, okay. And so, it was just something I had no idea what I was doing. So, the second show, I was like, okay, we have to work with what we have. Because mind you, I've flown 2 days, so I'm just taking everything that I have. And it's all heavy luggage, so we had to figure out how to recreate it in a certain amount of time and try to figure all this out. And so we finally end up doing Black History Month. We coordinated with Kyle Woodland. So he's also like an actor. He's done stuff with Adam Sandler, but he has autism. And so we related because we both have a common disability, which we don't even think of it as a disability, but we basically connected over that. And he said, oh, I love what you're doing, come do this. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. So now we got to get to Philadelphia, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know where we're going. Like, because it's so big, the States. And so it's like, okay, but I actually met somebody and ended up staying with them for a bit, and then we went and did this show. And it's sort of just a big spiral effect. So sometimes we want things done a certain way, but you just have to go with the flow, to be honest. I think you really just have to let it go and see where it takes you, because there's some stuff where I'm like, oh, I didn't expect to do this. Even now, I didn't expect to make this whole business go global, and now I'm speaking on this and talking to so many different people across time zones. I'm like, oh, okay. And that really sort of changed the way I sort of saw myself, because I was struggling with becoming hearing impaired. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be normal. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And then when COVID changed, when the whole 9 to 5 traditional jobs went out the window, and now everything's online and stuff, it's been, I think, for the better, because I was really struggling, emotionally and mentally, just really like, why did this happen to me? Why have I lost my hearing? How am I going to cope? And hearing aids they're not cheap. So, it was like nearly 3,000. The first one I had was like 3,000, and they have basically like a little battery at the end of it. So it's just like a little, I don't know if you can see that, but that there. And then there's a little battery that would normally go like at the bottom. And so it only came in a packet of 6, and that was $10 per packet. So, sometimes the battery doesn't last that long. It'll be a couple of days, and it'll say something like, oh, the battery is low. I'm like, really? So I've had one battery where it was just completely dead, and the other ear I could hear, or both batteries went out. But now these ones, they're rechargeable now. So they're pretty good. But it's a long time because I don't wear them when I sleep and go for a shower and all that sort of stuff. But, it's a long time to wear hearing aids. So when COVID kicked in, had to wear a mask. And you can imagine someone who's hearing impaired, right? Because they had those glass, what do you call those? If you go to like the bank or the doctor, they had like a glass frame or wall. So someone's trying to talk to me. I'm like, I can't hear you. So then you have to go around the glass. I'm like, can you speak louder? Because I can't hear you. And they're like, oh, you have to go behind the glass. I'm like, I'm hearing impaired. I can't hear you. So because they had their mask on. And I was like, really? You're going to talk with your mask on behind the glass? But there's so many ways around your own situation that can help you be, you know, better, not just, you know, for other people, but for yourself. And I think when you know, it's okay to not have it all figured out, you know, you're still figuring it out, but just keep going. I think that's the biggest thing about being gritty, is that you have to keep going no
Yes,
matter what.
you
Now,
have to
and
keep
I mean,
going.
I could have just stopped right there when we didn't have any money for the first New York Fashion Week show. But you know, having my dad, he was like, "Look, just do it," you know. So that's pretty much
Yeah,
the name of the session. Just do it. And you know, sometimes it takes, you know, other people for you to realize, you know, other people's comments for you to realize that, hey, you can do this. You just have to, you know, figure it out and don't worry about it, you know. So, and I think that's been the
right.
biggest thing. And I think that's been, you know, the biggest support that we've had out of everybody. Like, they really like how we've just sort of kept going and stopped. And we've had a bit of a down year for the last couple of years since I've been back in Australia. We couldn't do the London Fashion Week show. I was just not in the right headspace. I was actually sleeping in a coffee shop. So I made friends with this community, and I ended up working at the coffee shop and sleeping there. And they were so good to me. There was people from across the road, around the corner, you know, because there was no shower in the coffee shop. So I had to go have a shower there, come back and just help out, you know. So I get up
Uh-huh.
early, put it all up. And I think, you know, a lot of the time people don't realize what is happening behind the scenes. They just see it as, oh,
Right.
it's all put together. But, you know, there's so much that we don't share with other people. And I think it's so good now that we have these platforms like this one where we can actually share and not be judged. You know, I think before COVID, it was
Exactly.
like we were so scared of what other people thought, you know,
Oh my
because, you
gosh.
know,
Right.
or we were embarrassed. And don't get me wrong, when I've been traveling, I was embarrassed I didn't have any money. Like, how do I tell you that I don't have any money? You know, that sort of thing. And that sounds crazy if you're traveling, right? Like, who doesn't have money when they go traveling?
Yeah,
You know, so,
I
you know,
understand.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so there's been, you know, really good people out there. And I think you really just have to, you know, believe in yourself. And, you know, I think there's going to be times where you're not sure what's going on. But like
Right.
Miss Mariam said before, go take a walk somewhere, take that time out to not think about it and just, you know, it's going to
Exactly.
be okay. So just keep going. So, yeah, I
Love
think
it.
that's all I can really say.
Wow. Well, this is pretty powerful. And you know, Leticia, did you want to chime in on that?
No, you can continue. Sorry.
Okay. Well, you know, Francis, this is your show. So I want you to, you know, share with us any other last minute nuggets that you might have, or, you know, maybe anything that you're really chiming in on in 2026. And, you know, maybe even if you have something that, you know, we can even join you on certain things, or, you know, you're trying to launch something, or you're partnering with someone or whatnot. We would love to hear from you.
Oh
And
yes. My brain just runs so far that I'm like, what's happening? But no, we are going to be doing a show with this amazing lady. We actually haven't met, but we have been talking for the last couple of years. She's from Canada, but she's part of the Indigenous Canadian community. So we're going to be doing a show
okay.
for Red Day, which is basically
Wow.
an awareness day, which is basically understanding and realizing the kidnapping and murdering of women and children and two-spirited people in the indigenous community.
Mm,
Two-spirited people are LGBTQ, and so basically it's called Red Day because it's obviously an awareness day, but also to make people understand what's happening in their community. So basically, we've got going to have, I think, at least
right.
10 outfits, and one of the outfits will be red to signify Red Day. So that'll be happening, I
Beautiful.
believe that's May. Yeah, so that'll be May in Canada. So that's exciting for us because we haven't been to Canada. So I lived in the States nearly 3 months, and then as a child lived in Mexico. So we're trying to go in the middle now. The aim is to go to different countries and basically I'm hoping for all countries, but we'll see with the world going a little crazy everywhere. We're not sure what's going on, but that's still the aim. That's always been my thing. I mean, that was my lifestyle. I've lived in 10 different countries now, so that was pretty much
Wow.
how I grew up as a kid.
You've
And
had
that
the
was,
grit. Oh
yeah.
my gosh, you have grit. 10
Yeah,
countries.
so that was
Which
pretty,
one did you
yeah,
like the most?
our life.
Which
And,
one did you like
you
the
know,
most?
um, we really liked Malaysia. I think that was always
Okay.
home for us. And I think, because my mom is Asian and my dad is, he's Caucasian. So, and I always say that because some people are like, oh, why do you say it? I say, well, because in the world that we live in, we're so divided on just things like color, race, and religion. I mean, the
Yes,
incident that we
it's
had,
colorism world.
yeah, especially with the incident we've had in, um, recently down on Bondi Beach, that shooting, it's brought people together, but we're also trying to tell people that as a country, we're still a whole. We have so many people. Bondi is a place where so many people from all over the world come down. People live there. It doesn't matter if you're purple, pink, or the great white shark in the ocean. Everybody lives down on Bondi.
Right.
And for that to happen in our country is just,
It's devastating.
mortifying, because we were like, what happened?
Yeah.
And like I said, we hadn't had a shooting since the 1960s. So, that was a big thing recently. But, we want to show, especially with the brand that we've created as a business, to show people that beauty comes in all different shapes and sizes, especially in
It
men and
does.
women. And the way we've structured this business is to relate people by personal experiences. So, if you're a mom, you can relate to being a mom. Like, you've got
Right.
kids and they're crazy, whatever the case may be, but you can find other ways to connect,
Right.
and make a difference just by having that conversation, or giving examples, or, what you might do for this person's kids or your kids or whatever, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So that's how we've really brought people together. And we've had people who even said to us they would have never have been friends with certain people because of their own community prejudices and all this sort of stuff. But now they're friends
Right.
with so many different people. And, we're trying to move that forward to share that, we can do this as a society, but you also have to be a part of it. Like, and I
Right.
know that not everybody wants to be a part of it. I get it. It can be scary. But that was the kind of household that I lived in, having a white dad and an Asian mom, who are both completely different people, like opposite people. Um, so,
I think it's beautiful
and
because you talked about coming to the States to do a Black history. But so how awkward was that? Um, seeing that you have a Caucasian and Asian parent, but yet you're embracing that Black culture. And what advice do you have for people that maybe they're in that boat where they're like, I want to do it, but I don't know how to really be let in, or I don't know if that's, I don't know how to even scrape the surface of that.
yeah, I think it's really about conversation. I think that's so important. And don't get me wrong, I have had people who are like, oh, what are you doing here? But as a biracial person, so I was adopted from the Philippines as a child. So I found out that I am actually half Asian and half Polynesian. And
Oh wow.
so, and I think when you have people around you who have really, mixed with other people, you can start to encourage that. And of course, I
Right.
understand that there are people who, they haven't been exposed to that, but that's not their fault. And that's not, the community that they've been, people are raised in different areas. And now, with after COVID, we've seen people connect on so many different platforms,
Right.
regardless of where they're from and things like that. And I think the biggest thing is that, when I grew up traveling, it was long before social media. You had to make it work. Like, if
Yeah.
we lived in the middle of, we lived in China, closer to Mongolia. Nobody spoke any English. We didn't speak any Chinese, but because of my dad's work, we had a few translators and other people. But we were able to connect things through food or music. So my dad, he might be white, but he loves music. Like, he will play, he used to make home videos on the little the video cassettes, the ones with the big camcords and the tape inside. But
Mm-hmm.
all the, when you play it back, all the music you'll hear, it'll be like Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, Elton John, Tom
Right.
Jones, whatever, because
Mm-hmm.
music doesn't have a color, and we spend so much time going,
Right.
oh, why are you listening to black music? Why are you listening to white music? Music is music for us
Music is
culturally.
music.
So my mom is Filipino,
Okay.
and she loves to dance. We love to dance, and that was the thing that we grew up with in our household, because the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines is colonized by America, but a lot of them do listen to country music. But that was the thing we used to do, before social media.
Mm-hmm.
We used to blast music in the house, just dance around the
Right.
house. There was no, this particular music, and it's only because we now have social media, or we have people who really want to divide that. And I have had people where they say, oh, I see you associating with these people. Like, why? Who do you associate with? And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you're nice to me, I'm nice to you, regardless of what color or religion you are. And don't get me wrong, there's good and bad in every culture, race, and religion. But I mean, if you're a nice person, then that's cool. Like, why do we need to divide it? We can find something in common. It's like with food, right? You go out anyway and you see people eating sushi or
Yeah.
curry or whatever it
Oh
is,
yeah.
and you can sort of see that they're eating, and they're from a different culture or whatever. I mean, why are we doing that? But I think, you know, with what we do now, with these platforms, it's really important to, listen to what's being said. A lot of the time people are just listening to reply, they're not listening. And when you actually listen to what the person is saying, you can actually understand. You can create a common interest. And okay, not everybody's going to warm up to you. I know when I went to the States, I was dating an American guy. Their family hadn't traveled, but it was the whole thing like, oh, she just dating you because she wants a green card. And I said, and I had to explain stuff like our healthcare system here, had to explain, certain things that where I'm like, I'm good. I don't need a green card. All this sort of stuff, so it was interesting after a
Wow.
while, like they sort of stopped saying that, because to me personally, that was a big insult. Like, I just felt like, oh, okay, you just judge me based on me coming, to the States to do X, Y, B, and Z. And I was like, oh, no, I actually like your son. Like, he's actually nice.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So it was interesting to have those conversations. And after a while, the family sort of warmed up a little bit. But, I get it. In all cases, it's not for everybody. But if you can at least try to connect with people, and I think that was the thing when we ended up doing um, Black History Month, because if there's a movie, if you can find it, it should be on Netflix. It's called The Sapphires. It's based on a true story in the 1960s. So 4 Indigenous Australian women went to Vietnam. So that was during the war, Vietnam War, which that involved America.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's around that same time. And it's also around the same time as Martin Luther King. So in this whole
Mm.
movie, you
Wow.
will see that it includes these 3 things, and it's on 3 different continents, but it's
Wow.
all happening at the same time. So you will see the effect of,
Yeah.
of that. And a lot of time, I know people don't want to read history. I get it. It's upsetting and stuff. But we're really not all that different. This was happening at the
Mm-hmm.
same time in all these different places for the exact same reason. So in Australia, we have the Indigenous people. We have Aboriginal, which was basically on the mainland. And then we have the Torres Strait Islands. So that's the Torres Strait um, people, which is basically a chain of islands just above Australia and Papua New Guinea. So there's a whole bunch of them there. And we have a thing called the stolen generation, where basically the Indigenous people were taken away because they were basically they wanted to wash out the Indigenous people when colonization kicked in. So they would make them breed out with, the settlers and all that sort of stuff. And obviously, the lighter you are, you could pass up as a white child. And, there was all this sort of thing that was happening. But, in this movie, it shows one thing about, because it talked about, I think, Martin Luther King getting assassinated at the time. And during that section of the film, I'm spoiling the film now, but in that section of the film, you'll see Indigenous people standing up because they live on like reserves. That was the thing. They had put them in all these certain places. But they had really resonated with that because they saw Martin Luther King as a leader who was encouraging integration. And
Yeah.
we're still in Australia at that same time, we're still fighting for integration.
Wow.
There's really not much of difference when you read and watch. But add that movie to your list because it's a good movie. Because in the movie there was this one main fella. I can't remember his name exactly. I think it's Chris O'Donnell. But he was the manager, and he was a white man and everything. And he was saying to the girls, if you're gonna go sing for the troops in Vietnam, you got to give them soul music. So you can imagine in this film, it's so well done because my co-worker, it was her uncle that produced this film. So they're Indigenous. They produced this film, and but basically it's him playing soul, and it's basically these um Indigenous girls. One of them is Jessica Malboy. I'm so bad with names, but you'll see them. They're in a few movies like Blue Healers, and but all of these Indigenous ladies, they were there. And so this man is playing some soul music, and the girls are from the country, so they're like, soul music, like what soul
Yeah.
music?
What is
So
soul
they're
music?
introducing them to Black culture and all this sort of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
such a really well done movie. And I think if people watched it, they'll get an understanding of Australian history and how it sort of resonates with, the different communities. And I think, coming from a household where, and don't get me wrong, our household was a little messed up because both parents were born in the 40s and 50s. So they had their own
Yeah.
prejudices. So, but growing up, I decided not to take that on. I think, one other thing for me
Wow.
was I watched Bring It On. When Bring It On first came out, I lived in Malaysia at the time, and I must have been 10 or 11 when that came out. I saw Gabrielle Union. I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, she looks like me. And at that point in time, I had never seen anybody that looked like me on TV. I was a huge
Yeah.
fan of
That's
Destiny's Child. And I
powerful.
said, oh my God, they look like me. I want to be on TV. Like, all this sort of stuff, and I think it
Right.
wasn't until I got older, some people said, oh, they didn't look like you. Like they're African American. And I said, I had never seen it like that until you told me that they're African
Yeah.
American or whatever. You know what I mean? So, and I think when people put that into the community, that's when all the hate and division starts. Because for me, it was like I saw some brown ladies on TV and they look like me, so that means I'm going to be on TV.
Right.
So it was that sort of thing. And I think and now it's slowly changing. We do our Australian Army, we do get a lot of Africans that are in the army. So they
Oh,
go
wow.
to different places. There's one place called Palm Island, which is mainly all Indigenous. And the biggest thing this person said, because I was dating this person, they said, the one thing I enjoy about my job is that I get to go to these little islands because none of these kids had ever seen a colored person in the army. So me being in the army gives them some hope that they can do this too. And
Yes.
and I think that's that's the hardest thing sometimes in our colored communities. We talk so much about representation. So we get all these people that represent and then no one shows up. And it's like, well, you said you wanted people to, represent. So why aren't you showing up for these people? And I think, when we do all this gritty stuff, it really is about showing up, regardless of where you're from, what color you are. As long as you show up for that person, it's going to mean a lot to them. And I think
Right.
that's the biggest importance about it. And and I think with COVID now, we've seen what it can do and where it can take us and everything. So we've
Right.
learned from other people, and it's really all about learning about different skills from other people, because every day we're learning. It doesn't matter how old you are. Every day you can learn something from somebody, regardless of where they're from. They can teach you something that can help you in your business or individually,
Yes, they
whatever it
can.
is. Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing, is that thinking about it as we can learn from somebody else. So
Wow.
yes, I think that's it for me.
Beautifully said. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Now, do you have any how can we reach you, and you know, you have any last grit nuggets, and how can the audience reach you for those that would like to follow up with you in the future?
So you can find me on Beautifully Diverse Fashion. I'm actually on a phone because there's something wrong with my computer. The sound is
Okay.
being weird. So
What's the email or website? Do you have email,
oh,
website?
sorry. So I've got Instagram and Facebook. So it's just beautifully with a double L, beautifully.diverse.fashion. That should pop up. Otherwise, you can just type Francis Helena and I will come up somewhere. I'll be honest, I sometimes Google myself just to see how it looks.
Hey, we all do, right?
Yeah. So it'll come up
So is
on
that good there?
LinkedIn. Yeah. Yes, that's right. And then yeah, I'll be on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and just send a message
Okay.
or whatever. And then if you want to email, it's basically beautifully.diversefashion@gmail.com. We are in the process of getting this website. Our ladies helped me with it, Miss Hannah, and yeah, hopefully trying to push that out before the end of 2025. So
Okay. Excellent. And congratulations on that. So you said beautifully dot diverse fashion together
yes, that's right. Yeah.
at Gmail or
Yeah, at gmail.com. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And then you basically can type beautifully diverse fashion in. So there'll be a between diverse and fashion, there's a dot. Yeah, I know it's so long. But
Okay.
yeah.
Between diverse and fashion, there's a dot.
Yeah.
Okay, let
there's
me
a
edit
dot.
that. Let me
Yeah,
edit
you're
that.
right. Thank you. And then yeah, you can otherwise type that into Facebook and
Mhm.
Instagram, and yeah, it'll come up. And then once the website comes up, we'll release that, and yeah, we'll put some freebies on the website and people can like download and stuff. So we're still working on it. We're a little slow on that.
Okay. Well, this has been fabulous. And thank you